Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
I've been looking forward to doing this interview for quite some time because Super Squad tells the story of 23 footballers in the 60s and 70s who had the greatest influence on English football and what that means today. Delighted to say that joining me, we've torn away from his Sabutio set, no doubt, Colin Whelan, the author of Super Squad. Colin, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Giles, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat about my book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a period, it is the halcyon period, isn't it, when football was relatively innocent, there wasn't sort of sponsorship, there were iconic kits. I mean, it looks like you've got the Arsenal kit on the front of the cover there, but we'll forgive you that. And pictures that would make a modern day Ronaldo quiver and fall over and not come out of the changing room.
Exactly that. First of all, I mean, you need to read chapter 23 to find out the story of the Arsenal shirt in the front with the black number 10 on the back. Okay, so but there is a story attached to that in chapter 23 around Ray Kennedy. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the point I've made previously is that we lived through the greatest era of English football and we didn't even know it. The guys that were around then, you're talking about, the best Lord Charlton, Jimmy Greaves, Bobby Moore, Gordon Banks, those guys were absolutely the best players English football, Scottish football has ever produced, and we didn't know it. And this is the thing, we've had successes since then, we've had other players, Dalglish, but he's included as well. But, this idea that we lived through it all, and we were so privileged to watch these players. Cannot underestimate the power and the influence of TV as well. Television was in its infancy in terms of showing football, and we suddenly attached ourselves to it so quickly. And then we had beyond TV and black and white TV, we had the fantastic super visual of colour TV, and it was transformative. Actually watching a game of football in colour. Anyone that actually was born in that era and actually watched a game of football on TV, then all of a sudden you can watch them on colour TV. It really was. It was a completely different experience.
Because if you think about it, I mean, it's the 67 European Cup with Best. Is it 67, 68?
68.
68, obviously, there you go. With Best. But you always think of that in black and white, don't you? Because it was. And then suddenly, because the BBC gets colour TV with their huge outside broadcast wagons, and suddenly it's getting beamed into, the glorious white of Leeds, like I said, the red of Liverpool. But it's live, it's colour, and and there are players out there who are making it worth watching, to put it mildly.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that you just brought up a really good point. BBC showed the European Cup final 1968 in black and white, and do you know what? They actually showed the FA Cup final in colour. I just thought of that. It's a strange. It was that they were bringing in colour TV very gradually. I think they would only have selected events that would actually be broadcast in colour. FA Cup final was, European Cup final wasn't. But yeah, it was just sort of it was the way that it was, and I actually make reference to that in my introduction. Yellow and blue are my favourite colour combination, because first ever cup final I watched in colour was Arsenal versus Liverpool in 1971. That colour combination has never ever left me. Fantastic.
Talking yellow and blue, I know it's not exactly English football, but if you're saying to say a defining moment that is colour and football, 1970 World Cup, Brazil, Italy, the glorious Mexican sun, and look at now, it's saturated with colour. And I know it's not, but that from that point onwards, everything is pretty much in colour, including the scraps between sort of Keegan and Bremner. It's wonderful stuff.
But most people, 80% of the population would have watched that fantastic World Cup in black and white. And then it's afterwards, then you found out it was recorded in colour, And then you would have seen it, when you got a colour TV, then you would have seen the highlights of it later. But most people watch that live experience in black and white.
Right, so we've dealt with the colour issue. That's pretty good in the first 5 minutes. There is, because, I grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, Stoke-on-Trent and the Stoke country, and it was sort of a thing that footballers, when they retired from the game, they just ran pubs in the Midlands, didn't they? They didn't become pundits. They didn't go on the, again, I go back and also I'm thinking about those big matches that we covered, the FA Cup, which used to get the whole day, the wives in the outfits. I mean, the build up. I mean, now it's like, okay, FA Cup's on in 5 seconds time, but it was that whole, the wives in matching outfits and matching hairdos. I mean, politically incorrect. It's looking back at a special time, isn't it, Colin?
It is. And don't forget, in those days, there was only 3 games of football that were broadcast live. There was the FA Cup final, there was the England-Scotland Home International, and the European Cup final. So that was your treat. The first game of the year that was actually broadcast live was the FA Cup final, which is why families settled down for the whole of the day to enjoy the whole immersive experience. Watching a game of football, the build-up to everything was just incredible, on a colour TV. It was a whole family day. Of course, with sport now, because there's a live match on telly every single day. At least one. Yeah.
The book deals with, as I say, the players who transform football, and it's not just about the greats, isn't it? So what was what was your criteria for selecting the players?
Yeah, and the players I've already mentioned, they are the standout world-class players. You have to include them because they did move the game on anyway. But then there was the ones that I think should have, my personal favourites. Okay, fair enough. But I think there's always one or two that you've forgotten or you discarded, you attached a bad name to, but were actually, what I wanted to do was try and rebrand them, if you like. There's one player there called Ian Yore, who used to play for Arsenal, and he got a bad reputation. He was a bit agricultural, and but when he came down to,
when you say a bit agricultural, sorry, Colin, what that's a wonderful expression. What I mean, did he have a cult? Did he have a tractor behind him? Did he go in at head height, or like a strimmer on steroids?
If you can imagine Tony Adams sort of mid-80s, before Tony Adams became a very, very good player, Tony Adams was a bit raw. And I think we can put it down to that. There's a rawness about Ian Yore that marks him out as, a very, very aggressive centre-half. And he made a couple of high-profile mistakes in televised games. People never forgot about. But, when a guy came down to England in 1967, he played in the home internationals against England, 63. Scotland had beaten England 2-1 at Wembley. And Kenneth Wilsonholme, no less than Kenneth Wilsonholme, who was the guy commentating, 1966 World Cup final. I think it's all over. Kenneth Wilsonholme described Ian Yore as the best centre-half in the world. Now, what happened? He got a very bad injury. Arsenal never recovered. And as it was in those days, sort of injuries weren't treated properly. They were just, you injected cortisone into a badly damaged knee, you get them out on the pitch, and it makes it even worse. There was no proper rehabilitation. So anyway, he ended up playing with a knackered knee for a long, long time. And he just got worse and worse as he got on as his career progressed. But, I think that the other thing that happened, he made his name on TV before that, outside of football. Not before but during his career at Arsenal. There's this quiz program in the 60s called Quizball, and it was games. It was teams of football teams against each other, competing against each other, general knowledge quiz. But Ian Yore stood out. He actually looked as if he had a brain, and he could answer questions not just about football. He could answer questions on general knowledge. So it already established a reputation. I think the point I tried to make is that this guy was known on TV before to a wider audience than just a football audience. And then what are some other players? Sort of John McGovern at Forest. The guy was twice captain of the European Cup winning side, never once capped for Scotland. How did that happen?
And there used to be this, didn't there? There used to be this legion of Scottish players coming down. I mean, the backbone of every English team was a Scots.
Oh, yeah.
It was, and you kind of think what's happened to that, because
I know. It really. I mean, don't get. That's the other thing is that the Scottish League has been. There's a lot more foreign players in the Scottish League as well as the English League.
Yeah.
So there are fewer Scottish standout players, if you like. The ones that obviously do come down and stand out, that Andy Robertson, Liverpool, Scott McTominay. He's out in Italy now. He's playing for, is it Roma?
Roma, yeah.
Anyway,
I think it's Roma, yeah.
He's had a great season out there. He's really, really appreciated. The talent's still there. It's just there's not as many of them, I think. But then you might say about English football.
But the thing is, obviously, now we're in a situation where the money's so good that they will, they're attracting players from all over the world. And whilst that's great for the spectacle for the Premier League, that sort of backbone coming down from, the English talent, the Welsh talent, and the Scottish talent isn't being developed. I mean, it's all about the money. And I remember the outcry when Trevor Francis was the first £1 million footballer. I mean, does the book sort of chart the money coming into the game as well?
Yeah. The closest we get to it really is the chapter on Jimmy Hill. That does go into. Well, Jimmy Hill, first of all, okay, so he ended his football career in 1961. And at the time, he was the chair of the Professional Football Association, which was massively influential. They were going to call a players' strike because they wanted the maximum wage abolished. The maximum wage at that time meant that doesn't matter how good you were, if you played English football, you got 20 quid a week and that was it. That's all you got, 20 quid a week. Okay. So the maximum wage was abolished, and all of a sudden you had the first ever English football player called Johnny Haynes who started to earn £100 a week at Fulham. Now, that paved the way. The instigation started there. £100 a week, that's it. There's no limit. Then all of a sudden, soon, we've been sort of 10, 15 years, players were getting £500 a week, £1,000 a week, bit by bit. Charlie Nicholas, when he signed for Arsenal in 1983, £2,000 a week. Wow, where's that come from? But that was it. The gates were open, essentially. So the chapter on Jimmy Hill does, it touches upon. That's where it all started. If you like, once we abolished the maximum wage, once you started getting transfers, big transfers. And then the game changed. Yeah, indeed.
And it's, as I said before, there's an awful lot of, you mentioned the effect that, getting rid of the maximum wage does. But it talks about some pioneers. I mean, when you think of pioneers, I mean, who are we talking about there? Are we talking about the best, or the Charltons, or the Dalglish?
Because they changed the way the game was played. We've never seen someone as skillful. We've never seen someone like Colin Bell at Man City. Basically, could run all day and be a skilled football player. If you're talking about sort of the transformation of when football became a game of 11 athletes on the pitch, look no further than Colin Bell. He was the one that actually, he was the first one, who could run for 90 minutes and highly skilled. My personal favourite is Danny Blanchflower. Danny Blanchflower had this great intellectual capacity. He was a very, very clever, articulate guy. And you never ever see that in football anymore. There's no one go-to player that every single TV company wants to go to and have an interview with because they're so articulate, going to say something that's quite remarkable about the insight on the game. And I think that'd be lovely to actually sort of have a go-to player or go-to few players that would talk you through a game.
But the problem is, because we're in a world of corporate and media training, they have to say the same thing again and again because there is so much money washing around there. You only have to think about, what is it, the Spanish international who had the whole problem with his boots against Spurs. He just got a massive deal with Puma, and it's all gone. He had,
and they can't say anything wrong. they have to play it safe, don't they? So,
every team is a challenge, and they have respect and etc. Even if you're beating, I don't know, old Wastonians boys team from Moldova or something. Who's your favourite player then out of this lot? And because my favourite player from that sort of era is somebody like Ray Kennedy, who stuck at it all, and was overlooked an awful lot of time, and was an absolute brilliant servant.
No, likewise, Ray Kennedy for me was, he was my second hero. It was George Beckham, the first hero, and then the chapter on Ray Kennedy tells you the story from a personal point of view. I went off Georgie Bears very quickly, and then as Ray Kennedy became my hero. And the reason it was an age thing. I was 7. I didn't know any other football players that were close to my age, and all of a sudden I found out that Ray Kennedy was 19. Sort of relatively, he was very young. So I attached myself to him. And, it was a good choice. Fantastic guy, sort of really, and later struggles with Parkinson's particularly. But he always remained my hero. And it was, just a fantastic player. But actually writing the book, I came across, players that would, were my new heroes. Finding my new heroes as in my 50s, my late 50s. How did that happen? Because you love football. That's why. And I think Jack Charlton is the one that stood out for me. Fiercely intelligent man, great lover of football, real sort of guy in the wall football man. He really was. The more you read about him and his influence in the game, fantastic guy. He really was.
Didn't suffer fools gladly either. Very committed.
He did not, did he?
What are you hoping that people are going to take from Super Squad?
Just my infectious love of football. I think just read the book and you just get an idea about sort of what football meant to me. Just rub off a little bit on other people. Just okay, and then what will happen? You might want to buy Super Squad 2 and Super Squad 3 because I do want to write the trilogy. I want the next book will be 70s, 80s, and the next book after that will be 80s, 90s. And I think that's.
And then afterwards, we just sort of throw it in. After 96, that's it. Basically, it's all kind of over.
That's when football ended.
Yeah, pretty much so. Anyway, if people want to follow you on the socials, Colin, is there a website? Do you TikTok? What happens?
Okay. I'm on Facebook, but there's a fantastic site on Facebook called Football in the 60s and 70s, which is run by a guy called Edward Elishak, and it's fantastic. It really is full of our members. There's plenty of football sites dedicated to that era. But my favourite, where I got involved in, reminiscing about football, I suppose, football in the 60s and 70s. And say I'm on Facebook. What else do I do? I am on not TikTok. What's the other one?
Instagram, perhaps.
Instagram.
That's the one. Yeah. But listeners will be able to order the book via our own virtual bookstore, which I urge them to do, so at least we can get Colin back onto Super Squad 2, the return of the Super Squad, or the Super Squad Strikes Back, or Strikers Back, whatever you would have put any Star Wars reference.
Yeah.
Colin, it's been great to sort of walk down that turnstile, that nostalgic turnstile with you. The kits were great. I mean, the kits were big stuff, weren't they? You look at them now.
And Cotton, weren't they, as well?
I don't know, because I just remember the Sabutia games with the whole league thing. And was it Ajax, or could it be some team out of second division France? You know what I mean? Colin, the book is called Super Squad. It's by Colin Whelan. Colin, it's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Giles, for the chance to plug my book, and lovely chat to you as well. Thank you.